Welcome to episode 36 of Discourse in Magic with the wonderful, the fabulous James Allen. James is a really awesome friend of ours from Toronto, and I do a little bit of an introduction in the episode, so I'm not going to belabor it right now, but all I will say is that he is a really, really bright guy, and we chat all about everything from introductions, which we had a good laugh about, all the way to things like putting things in and out of your show, and things like, those 1% additions to your show that really help them as a whole. So here it is, episode 36 of Discourse in Magic. Cue the music.
Hi, my name is Tyler.
And my name is Jonah, and you're listening to Discourse in Magic. We're just a couple of young guys who want to make Magic better, not by hunting for the latest tricks, gizmos, or instant downloads, but sitting down with people and trying to find a better, more thoughtful approach to Magic. Now, if that intro sounded nothing like any of our other intros, that's because it was written in
By a fan.
And that fan is actually our current guest right now. And so his name is James Allen, and James is a pro who lives in Toronto, and he seems to have his hand in just about every single Magic cookie jar around. He was the president of a local Magic club for 3 years, where he organized some really awesome events with people like Eugene Berger, Michael Weber, and Danny D'Ortiz. And he also ran a weekly show for several years called Magic Tonight, which we've, of course, been to many times, and he gave Toronto performers a chance to try out new material, which is a real gem for Toronto. And he's also done a ton of solo shows with really awesome names like Illusions of Grandeur, Uncertainty Project, Magic and Martini, and Lies, Damn Lies, and Magic Tricks. Here he is, the fabulous James Allen. Woo!
Oh.
And of course, if you thought that intro was nothing like we usually intro our guests, that was because he also wrote himself an intro, which is great, I think, because, hey, the less work for me, I think, the better.
Although
James,
he did make you type out.
Right, I did.
It's a little bit more work.
How are you? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm sorry. I scribbled that on a notebook at a bar last night in Oakville because I had 4 hours to kill between when I had set up for my show and when I actually went on. And I was actually catching up on my Magic podcasts, including Discourse in Magic, and you had said that you really would have appreciated an introduction. So I thought about it for 45 seconds and went, and you got it.
And there we go. So for those of you at home, we really do mean it. If you want to write an introduction, if you are close enough fans that you're actually listening to this, the week after, a couple weeks after we asked for an introduction, then write us some. We're happy to do your intro and show you out. But good luck getting on. Doesn't necessarily you'll be on the show. So we're here with James Allen, and you heard already, I sort of mentioned in the intro some of the things that he's done. So let's sort of start at the beginning. How did you get into Magic?
I got into Magic very, very late by regular standards. I think I was between 18 and 20, somewhere in there, and I read an essay in a book called How to Play in Traffic. And it was by Teller, and he was talking about staying at Bob Reed's house and practicing the cups and bowls every night from like midnight till 4 in the morning. And that was the first time that I ever internalized the idea that Magic wasn't something like, a singing voice that you either had or you didn't, and yes, lessons would help, but if you don't got it, you don't got it. Rather, something you could actually learn. And I went on the internet, and this was in the days before you could Google absolutely everything, but I discovered that I lived around the corner from a store called Morrissey Magic. I mean, there are, I think now, 6 Magic shops left in the country. It's hard to live around the corner from a Magic shop. And I started there with the cups.
Made by Morrissey Magic.
Made by Morrissey Magic. And the Michael Lamar Complete Cups and Bowls. And
on VHS?
Yes.
That was a good point of order.
I'm sorry, they'll continue the interview for a while. I feel old, I'm going into the corner to cry. And it just spiraled out of control from there, because from there you find sources that recommend other sources, and find very quickly that secrets are addictive, and it weaseled its way into my life, and I was extremely fortunate that several times at just the right time I happened to meet people who turned into fantastic mentors and were able to help me along and get things going. And it just so happened that as I was finishing school, and before this I was a martial arts instructor. I mean, if you think being a magician is weird, try that. And I was getting out of that because my friends and my coworkers, I was watching people around me left, right, and center have knee surgeries and shoulder surgeries. And the instructor that I trained under, I found out he recently had a double hip replacement.
You should train under some safer people, I think.
Yeah. No, but the risks associated with any sport.
Part of the game,
And I was looking for something to do for money, and people were offering me money to do this. I mean, I remember doing a guest spot on a show way back when called Friday Night Magic, and someone asked me for my business card, and I thought, why would I have a business card? And I didn't do anything with it at the time, but I kept his number, and I think 6 or 7 months later, I finally did get in touch with him, and he booked me for my first restaurant. I actually have a show that I have to do for him next Saturday. I mean, we're still working together, what is now, I think, almost 10 years later.
Jeez.
Wow. And it seems like, I mean, I admittedly know nothing about martial arts, but it seems like both are things where learning and knowledge are very important, or at least have been very important
and practice,
to you.
Right? Like the obsession and the methodicalness of
it taught me that technique matters. So if you're not doing something right, you can work at it for years and get nowhere. But if you learn how to do it right and slow things down and break things down into smaller and smaller and shorter steps, there was an instructor in Ottawa who was also a very senior RCMP officer, and he had a wonderful saying: sometimes it's not the technique, it's the technician. And so if something is not working for you, that doesn't necessarily mean that the technique doesn't work. It means that you have missed something. You're doing something wrong because you weren't paying attention. And you find that all the time in a magic book. It's like, this is not working, and you realize that the thing that makes it work is actually right there in the text, and you
right
just skip that paragraph.
Yeah. And I think it's a funny thing to mention with technique that, I mean, we talk a lot on this podcast about how not important, like, dwelling on technique is, but there is this sort of, I don't want to break it down that far, but like binary, like it either worked or there were still things that were wrong with it, and
I don't think of it as a binary thing. I really did come into magic at just the right time, where I was able to sort of steal everything I was learning in school and apply it in that direction. So one of the fundamental assumptions of economics is rational people think at the margin. So if you are doing something to your technique that's going to make it deceptive to 1% more people, or 0.5% more people, and then you can find 20 of those things, 30 of those things, and put them all together in one trick, you're going to have an amazing trick at the end, not because you found the one secret, but because you took small things and layered them one on top of the other. And also it makes the trick harder to figure out because everybody wants to know the secret.
Right.
But if the trick is working because there's 40 secrets in play, they've got no chance.
Mm-hmm. First of all, like, overlapping methods is definitely a huge way to fool people, but the thing that it...
Not even overlapping methods, but the timing with which I deliver that particular line, where I put the pauses so that you... do I put this sentence before that sentence so that you think of those things in different orders?
The word that comes to mind is like, and you see it when you hear it, like, talk about like professional magic, is subtleties. Is you're adding these subtleties, these convincers, these things that push that 1% more. That it
goes back to Tommy Wonder. He's talking about attention management, which is what he said was really the correct term for misdirection.
Yeah,
and
which I agree with 100%.
Yeah,
like
totally.
It's direction. It's like
it is. But he said it's better to have 3 soft pieces of attention management than one big, hey, look, there's an elephant.
For sure.
Because if one of them fails, you have 2 to
more
fall
grabs.
back on, but also they're soft enough that they're less likely to be picked up on as, I think you just did something to make me look away. Mm-hmm. Because each one by itself goes unnoticed, but it's the three of them together. So you do, I'm going to do the move first in a moment of relaxation, and as I make eye contact with you, and as I ask you a meaningful question. So the three of those things together, no single one of them feels like they're out of place.
And that's sort of something that you see a lot with beginners where, and it's especially apparent when you are a magician and a beginner magician is doing it and they're like, okay, so that was your card, and they're like, maintaining absurd eye contact for the first time ever for 10 straight seconds.
Are you left-handed or are you right-handed? Look at my face.
In order to do a move, and I think it's great advice to break it up, and I just think it changes, the approach. I was thinking of, binary as to just say, like, find one more thing, try to break it apart,
But do it in manageable pieces, as you're not trying to reinvent the wheel, you're trying to very, very gradually,
make it lighter and stronger.
And change the pattern of the grooves. And
So, you're someone who's had a lot of shows with some array of very interesting titles, and there is a question that, recently came up in an episode that I would love to hear your opinion on. How do you decide if something should stay in a show or leave in a show, and or leave a show? And the reason I bring it up is because sometimes you have an effect that's in your show, and you're like, you can put 3 more years of work into that effect to make it great. But sometimes there's an effect in your show that you're like, should I put 3 more years of work into this effect, or should I probably just put in something different? When's the right time to quit?
Well, if you are just starting out and making your new show from scratch, it's a different question, because there is no competition. It's, you need a 45-minute show, and you add up all the tricks you already have, you're only at 17 minutes. So it's not, is this squeezing something out of my show? It's, is this going to add to my show? And then it's a question of, is this something that fits in with the rest of everything? Am I kind of doing the same trick twice?
Right.
So,
or 7 times.
Or 7 times. So is this another thing where I borrow an object, it disappears and reappears in an unusual location? Have I done that twice already? Mm-hmm. Those are the sorts of questions. And I take the opposite approach to it, which is this a trick that I am going to be able to spend 3 years working on it? All the stuff that's in my show right now that is really, truly singing, I mean, it has been there now for 4+ years. Mm-hmm. And if I have a show which I feel is really, really important because someone in the audience is high profile, or I'm being paid a lot of money, or the stuff that I fall back on that I am the safest with is 4 and 5, and some of it is even 8 years old now. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, when you've been doing something for 8 years, it's going to take a very, very long time and a very, very special trick to get to a point where it's good enough where it can kick something else out of your show. Right. And I mean, that's, I think, the real reason why a lot of people stay with the same material for a very long time is, if I have all of the lines and all of the timing, and I can do it in my sleep so I have no tension and I can interact with the audience, all those things, if I'm going to start a new trick from scratch, how long is it going to take me? No, but how long will it take me to get the new trick up to a level where it doesn't all of a sudden feel like there's this new piece of rough around the edges crap, which is stuck smack dab in the middle of my show? So as your show gets better and better and better, the process of adding new tricks to it becomes harder and harder and harder, because you have to do more work off stage
right,
to get it up to the level.
You don't get that airtime. Like, you can't do the run-throughs in a live setting because you don't want that to happen, because you have a well-designed show already.
But I can't take a trick that I discovered and started working on last Thursday and put it in my show beside stuff which has been in there for 8 years, because it will stand out as being far less good than everything else. And it may be, the trick may be amazing, it will still stand out as less good because it will have all of the ums and the ahs.
All the beats and all, like, what we worked out.
the script won't be streamlined, so I'm all of a sudden using way more words than necessary. It's going to stand out as being weird and not fitting. So, I mean, whereas when I started, you could discover a new trick if the sleights weren't all that difficult. You could be doing it in 3 weeks. And now I can't imagine that being anything less than 3 months. And it's maybe even closer to a year. But also I'm at a point where it's not so much of a hurry because I still have that hour.
What a great show that you're doing. And yeah, one of the things I like that you said is that the topic of adding and removing things to your show changes based on where you are on your magic show journey, you know? And at one point it's well, it
also changes on where you are literally. So what I will often do is, because most people when they ask for a show, they are either asking you for 45 minutes or an hour.
Right.
That's what 90% of it is. And often you can get a better show by talking them down to a shorter show, because then people aren't falling asleep with all of the raffles and things that everyone else wants to do. So what I will do is, if I'm doing 45 minutes, is I will bring the full 60, and I will look and I will say, okay, this is the shape of the room, this is where people are standing, this is the amount of energy they have and the amount of alcohol they've consumed, because that really does matter for a lot of things. And I will take out material and get it down to the length that I want, because my show is pretty modular. I mean, I have sort of a long 75-minute plan in my head, and all of the tricks are in order, so that later tricks have lines that call back to earlier tricks and that sort of thing. It all fits together like a nice little package. But if I take 3 tricks out of the middle, you don't notice they're gone. And so I have that very mercenary mechanical show that way, and I will look around saying, this one thing doesn't have good angles, I'll take that out. And this audience is a little on the small side, so the thing that involves bringing 5 people up out of the audience and sticking them in a row, that should probably go too. Or this is an obstacle course of tables and chairs and no one can get up to the stage, so
less tricks for people come up.
But also, if I take out the trick in the middle with no audience volunteer, it means I can now keep that one person up there for 3 tricks in a row, and doing stuff like that. That's one of the biggest things that that annoyed me when I was doing the Magic Tonight variety show, was a lot of performers, they delegate the work of their show onto the audience, and they have this revolving door on stage where one person comes up, they choose a card, they go back to their seat. One person comes up, they look at the string box, they go back to their seat. One person comes up, they hold something, and it's just this like endless stream of, it's like, really, you could solve all of these problems if you put like a hat rack on it. You could put things
like
on.
a hook. Just okay, bring it back.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we brought up in an episode and in a recording, which hasn't come out yet, but secret recording, but is the topic of beginning, middle, and end. Generally, the advice that you get for magic show, same as the advice you get for, like a story or a song or like whatever, it's big splash at the beginning, the middle is longer, the ending is your big finality.
I know what you're going to say. So
because you listen to the
well, no. But I will even tell you where probably most people are getting it from. It was in Di Vernon's video set, which is now a DVD set, which has been out for 30 years. It says the opening should be something different, catches their interest, and the ending should be strong, and the middle can be whatever you want. He was talking about vaudeville. So he's talking about people who are performing for maybe between 10 and 15 minutes. So
I could imagine that would be true.
So that 3-step system, when you're thinking in a 15-minute section, makes sense. It makes less sense if you're talking about something which is 45 minutes to an hour. Now, so the ending should still be really, really good. The opening about, you have to hit them with something magical in the first 45 seconds is not really true. And we can talk about more about that if you want. But the middle is now this complicated, tangled mess. Because that middle is not a middle. It's 5 things. And so you have to think about the pacing of it. So some routines are talk, 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 joke, 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 talk, 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 examine, 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 punchline, effect. And some of it is effect, 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 effect. And some of it is more serious, and some of it you have to think about a little bit more. And you also have to think in terms of Paul Daniels was huge on the idea of the geometry of your stage. Mm-hmm. So he has a trick at the beginning of the show, which is the cup and ball, which is just him in front of the table. And then he brings people up, and so he's someone beside him, and then maybe you have two people up, so you're in the middle of a triangle. And then you have one guy up, and you do like the electric chair and that sort of. So he's thought about these visuals. Because, and I have this problem, is there are all kinds of tricks that I could have in my show that require me to stand in the center of the stage with one person on my left and one person on my right. Mm-hmm. And it's not quite right for me to...
You can only really do one of those.
Yeah.
Like...
But
or
Leipzig,
two, or whatever.
Leipzig, when he did his vaudeville act, which again is in that 10 to 15 minute range, he had a committee up on stage, and he kept them. So he did the thimbles... and I think at different points in his career, he did different things aside from the thimbles, but that was him by himself. And then he would bring the committee up on stage, and they would stay there for the rest of his show through like 5 card tricks. And then they would go back afterwards. So I can't bring up 2 people, send them back, bring up a different 2 people, send them back, bring up a different 2 people, send them back.
Crazy.
So, but that's now part of the plan of the show. And I actually got really, really excited 2 years ago.
That's been the last time. It's been a sad couple of years.
No. But specific to this, Magic Inc. put out a much delayed book by Billy McComb, who passed away a few years earlier. And he had a trick which had 3 audience volunteers. And like,
where do you put them?
No. But, and so there's 2 on this side. There's a diagram in the book. Right? There's a diagram in the book of where they stand. It's like, oh, that's really interesting. And one of the main reasons I didn't flip past it, and it turns out it's a really cool trick, and it is deceptive for a lot of people, and it's just weird and surreal. I think after I finished my sort of second one-man show worth of stuff, I had my show which was dependable and sort of good for the normal humans, and I started working on a lot of stuff which was more unusual and offbeat. And that's the material where I think, okay, this trick, which is basically 1/3 gay jokes, maybe I'm going to leave that out for this show. And another show, this trick, which is sort of science-y talk, maybe I'm going to leave that out for this show. But no, I stayed on that trick and spent the time looking at it and seriously considering it as something I wanted to work on, because it had a visual element of the 3 people on stage, which I didn't have in my show. And this is interesting. How does this work?
Okay. It's valuable that you're mentioning things about a magic show that have to do with variation of things that aren't necessarily just even like props, like that seems like almost like the basic version. They're like, I can't have a show only card tricks, but you're saying like the way that the magic unfolds itself in each trick should be somewhat different. The way people stand on your stage, the way things look on the stage, where you are on the stage, the pacing of the tricks,
the in between.
And I think that's a good thing to keep in mind for effect selection, because you're not comparing it against this world of, is this a good enough trick, but you're almost comparing it against your show, and you're saying, is this different enough? Like, is this, or can it be different enough, or whatever, which I think is valuable, because usually it's just, you're looking at a trick, like, do I like it? Do I not like it? Like, is this for me? But instead to pin it against your material and see if it's different.
And also, most importantly for me, does it fit with me personally? Mm-hmm. So when I was working on the second show, I was collaborating with the, I guess now infamous James. We were sitting in his living room, and we were reading through the script, and we were trying to come up with what we would put on the website to list the show and describe it so people would actually know what they were coming to go see. And we were just talking, and out came this, what for me was this eye-opening nugget of wisdom. He said, you perform magic for grown-ups. And so from that point on, my secret mantra has been, you do magic for grown-ups. And it's not to say that other kinds of magic aren't fantastic, but for you personally, and you have to think about the places where that goes. And so if I want a really quick litmus test to see if I can put something in my show, the fastest way is the question, could I perform this at someone's wedding?
Right. Okay.
Because what that means is you have a room full of mostly adults who are dressed probably as nicely as they will be dressed that year. Mm-hmm. And you are going to have people who haven't seen each other in a long time, who are going to come from all walks of life. And so that's the thing. And so, for example, there is some exquisitely beautiful rubber band magic. I mean, I think like Chris Westphal, who you had on the show, is like the Canadian master of it. But I can't have any of that because most of it involves having these rubber bands around my wrist.
Right.
So no matter how deceptive and how much I watch that and go, what the... and how much I like it in terms of its magic content, I can't do it because I can't wear rubber bands around my wrist. And so all of those... and I mean, I was just reading the Vanni Bossi book that just came out, and it contained this brilliant version of the Rising Cards. It involves carrying a Ziploc sandwich bag in your pocket.
Nope.
It's like, it doesn't meet the test. Even though I'm reading this going, this trick is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there kicking myself saying, I wish that maybe if I had a slightly different... And maybe the opportunity will present itself where I'll be working for a particular event. You know, you get booked for a show for the Glad Corporation who makes these things. Oh, then all of a sudden this becomes the perfect trick. But for my general, just personal thing, that magic for grown-up thing. And also, it keeps all kinds of lines out of my show. So, for example, you know, I'm going to put one in my hand, put one in your hand, I snap my fingers, and the balls change places. Can't do that. Even though, as a point of magic, that's a wonderful way of you do something silly, you lower expectations, and then everyone is relaxed. So when you do this false transfer, it flies right by everyone. So even though it has its value and its thing, it's like it's not the right thing for me.
So, do you recommend people sort of craft themselves a litmus test or some sort of what I'll compare it to is there's this. Have you ever read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? You seem like one who would have.
It's life coaching drivel, but
okay. So, but anyways, one of the things in it, which
the 8th habit of highly effective people is realizing there are more than 7 habits to being highly effective.
No question.
No, the reason I hate that book is because I worked for someone who thought it was the Bible, and she is just a horrible human being.
But what I was going to bring up is they talk a lot in that book about value-based decisions, which is that if you decide what's important to you in life, then when you make decisions, you can always draw back on those values. Which is what it reminds me of when you say, like, if you can sort of draw the line as to what you are as a performer, some sort of sentence or term or idea or whatever, then everything can pass through that.
Yes, and I mean, Eugene Berger said it in one of his earliest books. One of the most important things in magic is having a firm sense of who you are, which is unfortunate because some of the most passionate magicians in the world are younger people who have not yet solidified the sense of who they are working to discover that. And so you will see people think, oh, that's a great trick for me. And you take one look at them and you just realize that is so profoundly wrong. You just don't have an adequate sense of self. Well, you're 14. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And there's nothing, but you have to do that discovery. But someone who is crafting magic for themselves in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s has a much easier time because they've had that time to settle on who they are. And I mean, we're talking about, this is something that came to me by chance sitting in someone's living room. I was not out to create this litmus test.
You were trying to define who you were.
I wasn't trying to define who I was, but it turned out that in the process of, drafting ad copy for a website for a show, it fell out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you have, I mean, it's not really even magic advice at this point, but Do you have advice for people who are looking to define? I guess it is magic advice people who are looking to define themselves as a performer. Like you said that's an important thing to do, and it can be very helpful to craft a show. But how did you, like, it just came to you? You said, but I mean, there was.
Well, and it's one of those things where hindsight is 20/20. I always knew that was sort of who I was, and the looks that I get when people see me in track pants. They said, "What, are you sick?" It's wrong. I mean, I'm the most dressed up person in this room right now, and I'm still wearing jeans.
By far, yeah.
Not counting the Hillary t-shirt. But...
Well, we're both naked, so...
Yeah. I have a sock on.
Unfortunately, it's on his foot.
So there's something that keeps coming by when we're talking about, changing or reevaluating who you are as a magician, or reevaluating, is this big, huge example of Piff the Magic Dragon. And he's my favorite example because everyone's advice is always, just work at it for 30 years and then you'll know who you are. But he put on a dragon costume.
Yeah.
And I bring it up to say, is there value in drawing a line before, the world has basically gifted you what you are through? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
yes, but do you know the story?
I don't know the story.
So you should go and research the story, because again, just like somebody said, you do magic to grown-ups, the dragon costume was a gift from random chance. And the other thing you should know about Piff is that is not a character. The way he talks and the way he acts and that sense of humor is very much the way he is. Mm-hmm. It's, if he tried to do that and do a show dressed the way I would dress in a suit and tie, he'd be an asshole.
Right.
And because he acts that way in a vulnerable place, in a silly place, in an absurd place, dressed as a giant green dragon, he is hilarious.
So you're almost saying that it was like the last
that is your research project, is to find a story. I believe it's the interview on Penn Sunday School.
Yeah, he's done a couple where he talks about it.
But is to find the genesis of the dragon costume and to find why is it that he put on the dragon costume for the first time. And it wasn't, I am out looking for new material for my magic show. It was something else entirely.
Okay. Interesting.
All right.
So
Piff, we want you on the show.
I reached out to him a couple times.
I know.
Come on,
Piff.
No. Start with Mr. Piffles.
I was gonna mention something, but it's a surprise, so I can't mention it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So is there any? It seems like all of the things, and it happens across the board, but all of the answers to Magic's hardest questions are years of doing it more.
Well,
like,
no, this is, chance favors the prepared mind.
Right.
If you are working at it nonstop, and if you are spending 100 hours working at it versus 2 hours working at it, the flash of inspiration that leads to the unlocking of the door that opens this new horizon of possibilities, whether it's putting on a dragon costume or realizing that, you are more comfortable doing magic in a suit and tie than you are in shorts and a t-shirt, like David Blaine, or jeans and a t-shirt, whatever it is he wears. That is more likely to come to those people who are spending more time immersed in it.
Right.
So you are, in a sense, being rewarded for hard work. It's just you're not able to predict in advance exactly which part of all your hard work is going to provide that epiphany.
So that's a valuable point. The reason why I brought up the idea of almost the puzzle of saying, like, just do more work is because I want to be able to give, or I want the listeners to be able to have some sort of directed advice. Do you know what I mean? So if you were to have any directed advice about finding who you are, or finding who you are quicker, what 10, 50, 100 hours should they be doing? Or, you know what I mean? Like,
well, if you want to know who you are, the easiest thing to do, which is also the hardest thing to do, is to ask other people.
Right.
Because there are questions that, because your eyes are glued in your own sockets, you can never have the outside perspective. Video cameras have changed that a little bit. That you are not qualified to answer about yourself. You should know yourself better than anyone, but really you don't, because there's whole parts of your life that you're blind to. So if you ask your friends and ask your family, and I realize those are impossibly hard questions to find. I mean, I was extremely lucky with James that we had, and I mean, I called him the director of my show for lack of a better term. Consultant was too vague because he really did help a lot. Is we had two very, very important kinds of trust. One was that I knew that he respected my work enough so that when he would start criticizing things and saying this can be better, I knew that that was real criticism and it wasn't him trying to say, oh no, your magic sucks, I'm so much better than you, which is a real problem in this community and you know, the internet at large. And the other kind of respect was I had a respect for him, which was if he suggested something to me, like, could you stop, could you go back 30 seconds and try that again, but try saying it this way, is I wouldn't become defensive and say, well, no, here's why my way is better, let's move on, is I would actually go back and I would actually try it his way.
It sounds like the real actor-director relationship, the actor is, not to use the word pawn, but of course there's, and we spoke about this in the secret interview
better,
that hasn't, right? the actor, while all of the creativity, everything comes from them, it's the director saying, no, this way, no, try this way, no, try it this way.
But it is,
but they're still the star, right? Like the
of course, but it's like the openness to change the way you're saying, the way you're trying it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, to say that these ideas have value and this other person having good ideas is not a threat to my good ideas. This is a collaboration, not a competition.
Yeah. So let's talk about that collaboration. You've done quite a bit in Toronto in terms of both bringing magicians together with other magicians to learn magic, and magicians together with other magicians to enjoy the cabaret style setting of magic around Toronto. So let's talk about that. Why, what, who, how, where? Why did you put that sort of thing together just so that you could have that show, or was it something more?
It was, again, the universe dropping things in my lap. So one of the first shows, or probably the first show I went to see live in Toronto, was something called Friday Night Magic. It was started by James and Dave Curran, and I think 2000 there was a sort of a festival that was connected with it, the Magical Arts Festival, and it was a Friday night thing, and it was very, very, very informal. And I went once with a friend, I went a second time, I went a third time, and at some point there, I was going regularly. Circumstances sort of aligned themselves where they wanted someone to do like 10 minutes in the middle. Could I do something? And that was sort of the start. And they asked me to do more and more and more often and explore new things. And here I just, I'm at that point where I look back, and when you say now, I think I kind of have a sense of who I am. I had no friggin' clue of what was going on.
And how old were you at the time?
Between 20 and 22, maybe. I mean, your career goes through phases where at every point you look back at the work you did previously 2 years ago and think that sucks. So, in 2012, when I did my first one-man show, when I started thinking, I think I'm finally getting to the point where I can start calling myself good, I look back at video of that show and say, I would never show that to an agent today. That sucks. And then in 2015, there, and now you look back at the end of 2016 and say, no, that could be better, and the routines have gotten better. But anyway, so Friday Night Magic, and they wanted to walk away from it, largely because no one lived in Toronto anymore. And they asked if I wanted to take it over, and I did. And I made some changes, and I kept it going. And then I took a break, and then I did a year, which was my first one-man show, Lies, Damn Lies, and Magic Tricks. And that was sort of a fringe festival thing. But everyone missed the idea of Friday Night Magic because it really was open mic for magicians. And you got a chance to come out and try, but also hang out with each other because we like hanging out with each other because we share all the same interests.
And we often hang out with each other only in the jamming space and less so in the performance space.
More importantly, I think, my career exists. There are steps along the way, without all of which I would not be here, but one of the first identifiable steps is that one agent seeing me at Friday Night Magic and asking if I had a business card.
Right.
And that, if I did not continue that sort of show in Toronto, that opportunity would not happen. So there is sort of this sense of obligation. And I mean, it took us a long time to get it right. I mean, the show changed names like 8 bazillion times. I don't even remember all of them. The one we finally settled on, which was nice, was Magic Tonight.
Magic Yesterday and Magic Tomorrow didn't really... they didn't pan
Couldn't
out.
sell tickets.
No one knew when they were.
No, although it's... even that had its drawbacks, because when you have a show which is open to the public, you are... like when you do a private show, like for someone's birthday party or for a corporate event, you're in touch with the person who books you. When you do a show for the public that has tickets, you are directly in touch with your end consumer, which means you get feedback in a different way than you ever can. I mean, I have a page for that show on TripAdvisor. There are some nasty things up there. There are some extremely complimentary things, and the ratio is like 8-1, but
Such
also
are the laws of the internet.
yes. And some of them, I'm convinced, didn't even see the show, because I read these comments and I go back and I watch a video of that show, because we videotape all the shows just so you can actually see what you did and what you want to fix. And they're describing things that did not happen in the show they're complaining about. I mean, someone said, we were so pissed off we walked out in the middle. Meanwhile, I'm looking at a video feed of the entire show.
No one left.
I've got a view of the... No one left. Like, I grant you're entitled to be happy, but clearly something's wrong with your memory. Anyway, so show feedback, but people would say Magic Tonight. And it's like, but isn't there a show tonight? No, it's just on Sundays.
Is it tonight? No, it's Magic Tonight. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Where?
Where?
Sunday.
Yeah.
Is that a bar?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
No, but that's the other thing, and you're talking about people wanting to put together their websites and that sort of thing, is it taught me very, very quickly there is a large percentage of people on the internet who don't know how to read anymore. Which is, if you want them to know something, you have to put it in a video where you say it. Where
we learned that the
fine
hard
print-
way. We write blog posts that I have to put videos in the blog posts to get them read, right? And but I mean, it's for the sake of like, I'm trying to help people with stuff. So I write it out, and then I put the video, and they watch the video to learn how to do it. And I mean, we could talk endlessly about how that relates to Magic and how everything is right now, but
it does. It means you have to take very, very careful care when you're writing a show to make sure that the information you want to get across is parceled out, and you're both math people, you understand this. It's like A leads to B leads to C leads to D, and if A leads to B it leads to C leads to D, but C is really, really complicated,
then no one will make it through.
No, you carve out C as a separate introductory chapter,
B to
go
C1,
through C. No, you carve out C, so everyone agrees with C, and then
you start back
at then you can go from A to B to C to D without getting hung up in the middle. And you have to do that. You have to figure out what is the order in which I'm going to parcel out information. Because Magic is not really about, sticking your little finger in places and hiding things with smoke and mirrors. It's about controlling what information your audience receives in what order, so that they reach false conclusions.
I think also this is a fun time to talk about it, but we're all math people. And one of the things is I believe truly that understanding math and understanding magic are very related. It's really funny because people always go...
There is, I connected with Magic particularly because, and I hate mathematical card tricks.
Me too.
I hate mathematical tricks. But what makes for an effective magic trick and what makes for an effective proof or a well-written answer to a problem in math are essentially the same thing.
Clarity, right? And it's what you were just saying, which is allowing people to say, like walking someone through saying, yes, A goes to B, yes, B goes to C, yes, C goes to D. The only difference is at the end, with a math problem, when you get to the end, you go, oh, but at the Magic, when you get to the end, you go, what? And that's because in math, we never lied to you. But in Magic, we'd lie to you. One of those steps or two of those steps did not really happen. But we're so good at being, lack of a better word, teachers. We're so good at explaining why A leads to B and B leads to C and C leads to D that when we skipped a step on one of them, it's like a bad math proof. Have you ever seen one of those math proofs where it's like 1 + 1 = 1? And you walk through the whole thing and you go, it checks out. What the heck, right?
Yeah.
And it's just because one of those little tiny steps breaks a little rule that you didn't really realize you had to watch out for.
Divided by 0.
Yep,
Shit.
and you can go through a 20-step argument, and if there's one mistake on step 11, the whole thing falls apart.
And you'll see like famous books and papers get torn apart by philosophers by breaking apart one chain in a huge argument, right?
Yeah.
Which is awesome. It's the same thing as like magic, right? You get the whole trick, and then they're like, but they kind of look more like 2 cards. You're like, shit.
But you were asking about Magic Tonight and the idea of giving people the opportunity to perform. So when I took it over, and I was doing the organizational work of putting it together, but at that point, I really was organizing a show where, at a minimum, 3/4 of the people who were on the show were, no question, better than me. So it's a really interesting place to be in, where
you're bringing in some high level guys.
Back then, you didn't have to be that high.
I'm trying to help, okay? I'm trying to give you a little bit.
It's,
you know?
But it's a really interesting place to be because you're in charge and people are looking to you for instruction and guidance. But at the same time, when they watch you perform, they do know more than me, and they say, but you also get to say from the experience, I would like this done this way and this way and this way because.
Right.
And so I am learning by watching people who are more experienced than me. And, gradually that shifted. I mean, we had people towards the end on Magic Tonight who were starting from never really having been on stage before and building an act. And at the same time, I mean, there are people who have been doing this 30 years who are also coming in as guests. So I'm getting it from both sides, where I'm seeing people trying it for the first time, making mistakes, and taking notes saying, how can I make sure that doesn't happen to me? I mean, it's an unwise man who doesn't learn from other people's mistakes. It's an absolute idiot who doesn't learn from other people's mistakes. And
what is it? An unwise man who doesn't learn from his own mistakes.
But it's an idiot, a complete idiot who doesn't learn from others. But then watching other people who are more seasoned, more experienced, and they get to watch me, and they will say, I really like that. They will say, oh, you may want to try this. And again, it's not I'm not looking for the great, massive secret, but every one of these little insights and bits of wisdom, it adds up over time. I mean, that Magic Tonight, that was 150 shows. And, you're learning things and you're making choices, like little things like what kinds of microphones do I now own? And what kind of app am I using to run the music? And what kind of remote am I using and who is doing that? And how are we lighting this thing? Because when we take photos, it looks like shit. Oh, now...
Yeah. That was something I wanted to actually talk to you about, though. Before Jonah showed up, me and you had a little time to talk.
A little podcast of their own.
Yeah.
On a separate network called... No, I'm kidding. Conquest Imagine.
I was, marveling and giggling at the fact that you wrote your own intro, and the response you had was you have to set your own stage, right? So I think that's something I wanted to touch on as we're nearing the end here.
The thing that I learned, and I spent a lot of time with David Ben, and he has this mantra, which is 5 words: the scene contains the act, which I discovered, I read it in his book Tricks, and then when I met him, I actually discovered it has a much more literal interpretation than what I thought it did. But you can trim that down even further. Context matters. I mean, and you learn that from when you read reviews of these people online of the show. I had someone say that the show was awful, and their reason for it was the food was too salty. So context matters. They had some food that they weren't a fan of, and at the time they weren't emotionally aware enough to say, well, maybe I should send this back, or whatever the case is, but that was there. And now everything that happens after in the evening is now seen in a negative light, and their mood just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So every joke is now not funny just because there was too much salt on in some sort of curry. Yeah. And so everything that you can do to create this bubble of confirmation bias and placebo effect is going to add to the show. So
just for our people at home who are not smart, Do you want to walk through what those two things are?
For the idiots listening, for the okay,
For the stupids, we have stupids. Help out the stupids.
You gonna tack this onto the podcast where you tell your audience to go fuck themselves?
Yeah, that's exactly the one.
Yeah, I'm sorry I listened to that one. So the placebo effect is the idea that you can feel better simply because someone tells you you ought to feel better. Mm-hmm. And usually you do that in terms of medicine by you give someone a pill which doesn't have anything in it. But they take the pill and they feel better because their brain thinks they're supposed to feel better and the brain fills in the gaps. So that's the placebo effect. And confirmation bias is what we were talking about with the guy in the salt. So he's in a bad mood, he's in a negative frame of mind, and so he's looking at his surroundings in the show and picking out all of the negative qualities, the things he doesn't like. Mm-hmm. And all of the things that he could like and could possibly like, and the jokes that he might have found funny and the things that he might have found impressive, are washing over him and are not registering because he's decided he's only going to pick out the things he doesn't like. Eugene Berger actually said that about magicians, or maybe it was Darwin Ortiz. Most lay people look at a show and think of the things about it they liked. Most magicians watch a magic show and think of all the things they didn't like. Mm. You're in a different mindset. So if you can create an atmosphere before the show starts where they are already thinking that they're having a good time, and more importantly, that they are already convincing themselves that you're good. And so when you're introduced, the way they talk about you sets that stage. You know, you want to create the impression that you really, really know what you're talking about, that you really are good. And once they believe that they're watching someone who is really, really good, even if you haven't even walked out on stage and done a trick yet, everything happens is taken in through that lens of, oh, yes, that joke was really funny. I mean, he mumbled through 2 sentences before that, oh my god, so you set this stage of confirmation bias and you just go through. So, and what I started doing is pushing that back further and further and further. So when I did my first show at the Fringe Festival, we had a voiceover beforehand, and it was the turn off your cell phones and set them to silent, that thing. And we added a thing. Any electronic device that goes off during the show will be confiscated and smashed to bits with iron mallets. And I actually had a little hammer in the case, so if one got out, we could take it backstage and make some smashing noises. Oddly, never happened. Because
surprise!
No, but what happens was, they're delivering this little joke with this arcane British literary reference that no one gets. You might get it. But I am standing behind the curtain and I can tell how much are they laughing. Mm-hmm. Oh, are they awake? Are they engaged? But so the show is beginning before they realize the show is beginning. We took it a step further when we did Magic Tonight, is our voiceover there had the thing about the cell phones, but it also said, for those of you who think that sitting further in the back makes you less likely to be invited to participate up on stage, we know who you are, and it doesn't work like that. Because I'd be walking around before the show and people would be seeing. I said, well, no, we don't want to sit too close to the front because they'll pick on us. And so now all those people who actually go, oh my God.
You're actually hitting on what they thought of.
No, but it's worse than that. It's, oh my God.
They're fearing.
I told the person that sat us that I wanted to sit further away so they wouldn't pick me. It's like, they really do know who I am. It's like but again, it's, you're pulling them into the world, but also you're proving, they really do know what they're doing because they know what we're thinking before we think it. And you're just creating this bubble. And, I think it's a little bit pretentious to think, we're going to take them on a journey into a magical world. But, you can take a few steps in the general direction of a magical world. And you're just making it more and more likely that they're going to want to take those steps with you. And again, thinking at the margin, I'm not looking for the one thing that's going to make my show be over the top crazy. I'm looking for the 200 tiny things that are going to go through.
For those of you listening at home, that intro bit, like the crafting an intro to set yourself up for the placebo effect and for confirmation bias, that is a gem, okay? You just heard a gem. You just heard like a brilliant gem at the 52-ish minute mark. You just heard a gem, so do not let that one fly by because it's incredibly important what goes into your intro. And it's something funny we were chatting a little bit about earlier, but the amount of, magicians have heard all their fair shares of poor introductions, both ad-libbed and scripted, and just thinking of it not just from, hey, what would make me look good before they say it, but coming at it and really, dotting your I's and crossing your T's to set yourself up for success.
The other thing, for practical considerations in a show, it's actually hard to, first you have to plan really well in advance. You have to have this introduction, you have to have it written out somewhere where it's typed, but also it can be difficult to actually get it into the hands of the right person and have that 45-second conversation with them saying, I want you to read this. It is designed to be kind of funny, kind of whimsical and things, so read it over once, make sure you understand it, and then you can go ahead and just like that conversation. I mean, sometimes you don't have access to the people who are doing that, and you have people that just want to do their own thing, and you can't necessarily trust that the universe is on your side and everyone left to their own devices. Everything left to its own devices will just fall neatly into place to your advantage. Is you actually have to go out and you actually have to start manipulating things so that it all comes together in your favor. You actually have to go have those conversations and say, and it's really, really hard to have the confidence, and for the longest time I didn't have it, to actually have the ego to say, I'm basically, you have to find a nice way of saying it, but say, you're not really that qualified to do this. Here, I'm going to train you how to give an introduction. Because, yes, this is your party, but in real life, you're an accountant or a doctor or someone who works on cars or whatever. I mean, this is outside of your area of expertise. Let me help. And to get them to be receptive to that, that's actually kind of hard to do. And that's, one of the finer points of human interaction. And again, one of the things that just gets easier as you get older, only because people will be more willing to listen to you as you get older, it gets easier to have those conversations, that I don't think that I could have given you that introduction if I was 24.
Right.
Like that would not, even if I had been smart enough to know
that you needed an introduction,
that I needed to have an introduction that I had control over, because it really affects how I come off in the end. Up until maybe the age of 27, 28, 29, I would not have been able to follow through and actually get that introduction said.
Yeah, and I can imagine it being difficult to look at the person who's hiring you and paying you a bunch of money and be like, this is the way that you need.
And at some point, you have to reach the point where you have to stop being a people pleaser.
Right.
Because, yes, they are the one with the checkbook. They are the one whose opinion matters. So their opinion matters, but your expertise also matters. Mm-hmm. And again, that's assuming you have expertise and this is not your third show ever. But at some point you have to make that transition where you have to say, I really do know what I'm doing. I've put a lot of thought into this. Mm-hmm. And again, like a magic trick, like the math proof, I actually have to put thought into, okay, how am I going to have this conversation with someone? And I probably only have 2 minutes to do it in. How am I going to have this conversation where I'm going to bring them along and have them wind up on my side, where they're actually going to say, oh, yeah, this way of doing the introduction, that's a really great idea. Thanks for suggesting it. All of that goes into it. That is what makes magic so difficult. Mm-hmm. Is all of those little things which are simple in theory, but how the hell are you actually going to go out there and do them? And how the hell are you actually going to go out there and do them without seeming like a snobby jerk?
Mm-hmm. And I know for me, like, I've been in both realms where I try to be very laissez-faire when someone's booking me and they especially don't know what's going on. I say, wherever you need me, like, I'm here, I'm doing the thing. But then in also some cases, like, for example, when I'm booking my camp tour, like, I really have to put my foot down as to what can happen and what can't happen, and no, I cannot do the show outdoors. Thank you very much for insisting. I know you have a stage outdoors, but we cannot do the show outdoors.
Outdoor shows are fun.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I had Well, people ask me, so have you ever been to Sorcerer's Safari? And I say, no, I'm an indoor magician. But no, I had to do 2 nights at an outdoor theater in the Virgin Islands. And they wanted a very long show. And...
An hour and a half? Oh, that's more than all of my material.
So I'm now at the point where I'm just over an hour and a half.
Right.
But because of this Magic for Grown-Ups mantra, all of... a lot of my material is structured around dressing in a particular way. So if you want all of my material, it means you need to have me in a suit.
Right.
Because, that bottle and those thimbles and
they don't come out of shorts.
They don't come out of shorts. So if you want,
They don't come out of a Speedo. They're hiding somewhere.
And if you knew where, you wouldn't want to touch it. But no, and I was trapped doing 90 minutes in the Virgin Islands in August.
Oh my gosh.
Outdoors. In a suit. And
so you sort of live and die by your litmus test.
And really, I'm just going, wait, hold on, you're paying for a plane ticket to the Virgin Islands? Yeah, I suppose I'll take the show. It's just like, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with a little bit of discomfort. But, so, I mean, I will do an outdoor show. Mm-hmm. It's not like I'm in danger. I mean, I'm not a mentalist. It's not like all my paper is going to blow away.
I've had experience or whatever. And it was just an example of just saying where, you have to put your foot down, and sort of with experience comes all of the places where you realize that, hey, that time I let them say whatever intro they wanted, and that ended up being terrible. So I can start putting my foot down.
It's also a financial thing. Because if you want to do shows for money, and there are days when I think, I don't know why you would want to. I mean, why can't you just sit at home and work on the magic that interests you? Why are you caring about pleasing other people? But when you're just getting started, the shows are much fewer and further between. So you don't really have that freedom to say, I don't think that's the right fit for me. I need that booking. I need that experience. I need that exposure. That I have to say yes, even though the conditions are less optimal. So it actually takes a while. There's this sort of catch-22 irony, poetic injustice, whatever you call it, that you get the shows which are the most difficult to perform at when you are the least good.
Right.
And the better and better you get, also along with that, come shows that are easier and easier to do.
Because they fall in the place where you are.
Yeah.
And
but there is a definite pattern where you think the most expensive shows are the ones where you have the least amount of work. And the reason is because when someone is committed to spending a lot of money, and a lot of money depends on the person. I mean, it can be somebody who is hiring you for their birthday party for $150, and they've worked really hard to save that $150 to have that set aside for the show. Like, this is a big deal. It's when they are spending a lot of money, they are really willing to work with you to make sure that everything is perfect. And it's when that they have just sort of, I was having this conversation with someone yesterday. They wanted to tack on a magician to the end, and they had X amount of dollars left, which was, but at the end of it, like, when do they want it? They want it during dinner. Yeah. I'm working through an intermediary. There's someone who wanted to book this, who's working on their behalf, and that's a very hard conversation to get with when you're going question, middle person answer, question back, middle. That could take a week and a half. The show's in 6 days, actually 4 days now, and I mean, if they're not going to budge on the whole, we want to do it during dinner, the correct answer, I'm making air quotes on a podcast.
Depends on where you are in your...
But, so, if I need that show, then I will perform during dinner, take the chance that people are distracted and not really paying attention. It's not going to be my best show. If I am busy, particularly because it's the month of December, I've been doing this for a long time, I've established myself, I'm busy, the correct answer is, you know what, that's not really a good use of
Not worth
magic.
it.
Take that money, throw it into the open bar, give everyone an extra round, or that's an extra round of drink tickets for everyone at the bar. That is a better use of your money than trying to throw this in as an afterthought. But I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of courage, which I only have sometimes. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still a whore for money. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to say, you know what, I would much rather you not have magic in this show than me take your $300 or your $400 or your $200 or your $75 or whatever dollars and do a mediocre magic show. That's a really, really, really hard thing to do. Particularly if the alternative is you watching Netflix that night.
Especially if there's nothing good on. Yeah.
Especially with Tyler naked wearing a sock.
Yeah, on his foot. That's I think that's, I mean, I definitely resonate with it, and I've been on both sides of the coin in the sense of I've said,
you turned down your free trip to the States. Some guy out like some Florida
oh yeah,
gig.
well I got a message from a guy, and it just seemed too illegit because he wanted me to fly out to Florida to do a birthday party and put me in a room, and then when I quoted him a fairly conservative quote for something like that, he didn't answer me, but I wasn't going to respond because it seemed so made up.
I want to fly you from Canada to Florida for my kid's 7th birthday
I was
party.
like, there's
like,
local
there's magicians there.
Like,
I'm not the
I had
only
somebody.
one.
I had somebody phone me up, and they wanted me to do. And again, this was one of those things where it was an easier decision than it could have been because timing wise, it was very, very short notice, and they wanted me to go for a week to do, I think, 2 10-minute sets as part of a children's show in not the safest part of the Middle East. I mean, and for me personally, that's an area of the world where I am actually in, some personal risk I sort of have to keep to myself. But even then, I mean, it was a ridiculously small amount of money, but it's also, I'm going to buy plane tickets. It'll be my first time in that part of the world, that sort of thing.
I think I'll just watch that.
I had a wonderful, when I was in the early days of Friday Night Magic, I got a message from a young magician in Turkey, and he was telling me all about his act and how he wanted to perform on the show. And we could work out, fee for and accommodations. We just had to, as long as we paid for the plane ticket, it was okay. It's like,
No.
Sorry, bro.
No, but and I was really and I think this is someone who's going to fly to Canada and then disappear. And here I've let an illegal immigrant in the country. I mean, I was never going to say yes, but I was really curious how far I was going to take this. And he sends me a video, and it's like, it's not crotch magic on the bed, but it was a webcam of him on a very tiny table with a black candle and black nail polish, doing the cups and balls with those silver chromey plastic cups and black. Well, I'm like, yeah, we don't need to see this.
Sorry.
Canada doesn't need this magic.
Sorry. Thank you so much, though, for your time. Before we get to the ending, you're an avid listener of the show, and not avid, but you're a listener. I don't know if you're avid, but you're a listener of the show. Is there anything that any questions or thoughts? I mean, before we get to the real wrap up of the show, you share a lot about your opinions of the show with us, which we love because.
Do I? Okay.
More than anybody, more than
the average person.
We don't spend a lot of time with people who actually listen to our show. They live somewhere on the other side of the internet.
That is the glory of the internet.
Right.
Well, no, and I mean, I lived walking distance from two of the largest magic shops in the country,
right.
And I was sort of smack dab in between them.
And blind to it.
Before one of them moved and one of them closed.
Right.
And I'm still walking distance to the other one, or I was until last year. And, I mean, there are huge parts of the world where that does not exist. Mm-hmm. And so there are a ton of opportunities. I mean, people sort of complain that people in Toronto never go to Magic conventions. And the reason people in Toronto never go to Magic conventions is if you just sit still in Toronto for 5 years, everybody you want to see will come here. That's because they're going to come and do a lecture. And I have, and I mean, I organized a bunch of them, and I went through it, but there are very, very few people who are still alive that I still want to see, and that has to do almost entirely with the fact that I lived in Toronto, and if I lived even 2 or 3 hours away, I mean, that would not be the case. So the fact that you have the chance to, take these people and beam this out to wherever it's going is right.
And it's actually funny, like, for only 4 years of my life where I didn't live in Toronto, where I was away at school, I missed so much magic lecture and magician content in this city. It's just crazy. So what you said, sort of like, at least in this city you can sit still, but
and at least a third of it was organized by me.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why you were posting all those nasty messages on my Facebook. All right.
Yeah, you're planning all the events when I'm not here. Anyways, now we get to the end of the show, which is my favorite part because it's sort of the time where people get to get a nugget of information to take home, maybe something distilled from the episode. So for me, I think my favorite part of the whole episode was the talk of introductions, even from the introduction, and to just the idea of setting yourself up for success. And, although we're talking about all these different, there's 200, like Lou Serrano mentioned on his episode, like, I don't know one way to get more bookings. I know 20 ways to get more bookings, right? And it's the same thing. Yep. There's not one way to change a show from being a good show to a great show. But I think that as, silly or basic as this is, like, a really good starting place is the introduction. Because you need to know what you want people to think about your show, and you're sort of telling them in advance, right? So to have that sort of thing means you've got enough grasp of your show, of what you're doing, that you can set the stage for yourself. So I really like that idea.
Absolutely. I mean, really, what makes a good show is everything about the show, and you have to take responsibility for all of it, from the, Shane Cobalt's obsession with shining your shoes, to what you're wearing, to what kind of tables are you. That's the hardest thing to find in a magic show, is a good side table. Yeah. No, because normal tables are meant for people who are sitting down eating dinner
and leaning them on walls or whatever.
No, normal tables are meant for people who are sitting down eating meals. And in the is it Secrets of Conjuring and Magic, Robert Houdin actually describes, he said, the proper magician's table comes up to your belly button.
Right.
He probably used a more grown-up word than belly button.
Navel, but yeah.
He was also writing in French. But, like, those tables don't exist in the world.
Right.
You have to go out and buy something, maybe from a magic dealer, or have something specially made, or find appropriate something from a different area of life. Like, you have to, and you get a lot of questions about, you talk about something as though it's really, really important to you. So it's really important that your table be belly button height. Well, does it really matter all that much? Like, if I take away that table and go to one which is at sort of thigh level, is my show all of a sudden going to suck?
Depends.
No. But if I take 10 of those things that don't really matter and take them out of my show, pretty soon your show does get to suck. And a lot of you don't spend enough time sweating the details, and it really starts to add up in the end.
Todd, do you have anything from the episode?
Yeah, I mean, that was basically what I wanted to say, but this came into play with, we keep referencing the secret episode that hasn't come out yet, but I like the idea of when
keep your sock on.
when you're setting yourself up for success, it's the mindset that changes in the audience. Like, I can remember the feeling of when I went to see Copperfield and I walked into the theater and I didn't feel like I was supposed to be there. Like, I was like, whoa, this is like a massive space, people are dressed nicely, there's lights, like, it was this, like, what's going on? This is going to be crazy. How did I find myself in this seat? So I like that idea of, you know, you really need to think about what your audience is going to think about you before, during, and after the show, and what you want that to be. Is there any final points you want to throw out? Anything that came from what we talked about?
I think that about covers it. I mean, if you want to go for 2 more hours, we can do something. But I mean, I'm sure you have dinner plans.
Do you have any take home points from the episode?
I think the most important thing to remember is stop thinking in really, really simplistic terms, like the way you put together a magic show is this beginning, middle, and end formula. As and you were talking about like the 7 habits of highly effective people, and real life is just so much more complicated than that. So
The
much
formulas
more.
and steps and
Yeah, and I mean the formula is make a small change. Does it make it better or worse? Rinse, repeat 8,000 times.
Right.
And think about it really, really hard and play with it a lot and see what works and see what doesn't. And you'd actually be surprised, and I know from watching a lot of performers who were on the show, at least 2 of the guests that you've had previously who might prefer to remain anonymous, I'm not sure. Not entirely, but did a large portion of developing their acts on shows with me, just because that was a stage that worked and I wanted people to be on it, and they were friends and it worked out really well. But watching the changes and going through, you'd be astonished how much of this stuff does not require an audience. Like,
wow.
Lots of people are too eager to throw stuff. Well, I need to work it out in front of an audience. And you'd actually be really, really surprised just how much you putting on your jacket and taking out the deck of cards and getting out the table there and putting an iPod speaker in the corner where you can play the music or whatever the case is, you'd actually be astonished, or the mirror on the wall, how much of this it's actually possible to do before the audience sees it.
That's a huge tip.
Yeah, that's a big nugget.
I mean, the most eye-opening experience of my... No, I can't say the most because there are too many to count. But like, this huge thing was, again, in the living room of the director, getting dressed up, and for an audience of 1, doing the whole show word for word. And all the stuff that you realize, like, oh, shit. Both tricks need to have something in the right jacket pocket. Okay, one of them I have to figure out a way to have that in the left jacket pocket instead, or in the... And that was where we worked out the sort of things like, okay, how many tables is enough tables?
And the wrong time to figure out which pocket to put it in is 10
During
minutes
your
before the
set.
show,
Yes.
or when you're getting dressed.
Yep.
You know?
But it becomes, and I got to watch, from my position at the war room, back of the room, I got to watch a lot of first-time material. And it becomes very, very obvious to me. I mean, when you're in this line of work, there are things that you pick up on that other people miss. I remember being at a wedding, and I knew instantly, and no one else in the room could tell, that the priest had forgotten the groom's name in the middle of the service. Not only did I know he had forgotten it, I could tell by the way he was darting with his eyes that he knew where he had it written down in case he forgot, and it was about 10 feet away, and it was going to be about 6 minutes before he got a chance to look it up. But no, I can tell very, very quickly when this is something which has never been done before, because had you simply tried it once, you would realize that that doesn't fit, or this
Wrong
hand
pocket,
can't reach into
right.
that pocket.
Yeah, and also I think like the nerves of being in front of an audience, like you might not be able to tell a joke the same way because you're like, oh my god, this is new material, this is unrehearsed. Whereas like if you just
most people are hoping that they have the moves down and that they will be able to come up with the word part of it on the spot.
Right.
And that is, it was certainly true of me when I was younger, and you certainly regret some of the things that come out of your mouth when you're working in that mode. Oh boy, do you ever. No details. Thank God there's no video. But no, it's you don't want to be you don't want to be treating your audience like lab rats.
Right.
You want to be showing them things that
You
you're
treat
already
yourself
proud
like a
of.
lab rat. You treat
Yeah.
your audience with the tested material that you have. Do you have anything left? A word of wisdom, a word of warning, good stuff, bad stuff, anything? You got millions of magicians listening to you. What do you want to tell them?
No.
Peered over to his notes, I got nervous. Actually,
I got it all.
now that you mention it.
Where do people find you? What's your...
I mean, if you're a magician listening, I have no idea why you'd be particularly interested. I mean, my website is jamesallen.ca. And
Actually,
if you're
sorry
in Toronto,
to interrupt your talking about all the things which we asked you to do, but James has one of the better magician websites ever. I
One of the
feel.
better ones ever.
I feel like in terms of the ones that I've seen, in terms of photos, text that is meaningful to the person that is reading it. The big text has the important things. There's the testimonials. There's
Hireability.
you can go to my website.
whatever it is.
if you
He's
want.
got a very good website as an example. So
But if you happen to be in the Toronto area and you want to come see one of the shows at some point, you're more than welcome to. But I mean, I have over the years put out small booklets and lecture notes, but as far as I know, there's really no place to go and buy them. But if you're interested, you can email me. I have a few of them, I think, sitting on a shelf somewhere.
He actually gave us a copy
Yeah,
with
baby.
an inscription.
Oh, baby.
So, eBay, look out.
Well, anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This episode was legitimately packed with secret gems. So I tried to highlight some of them, but there are a lot of them that I didn't get to highlight. So thank you guys for tuning in. And of course, thank you, James, so much for coming and joining us on this fun excursion through...
Thank you for having me. Thank you for manscaping. That really made the interview a lot easier. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, and take care. We'll see you guys in the next episode of Discourse in Magic.
Peace.
Thank you. Whoa, sneeze. Achoo! Bless me. Thank me. Good thing I'm alone. Okay. Thank you so much for listening to episode 36. I really enjoyed it. I hope that you guys did. It was really informative. Oh, wait. Achoo! Bless me, thank me. Sorry you guys aren't here, but I gotta do it myself. So... James chatted with us. Oh, yeah, I'm laughing at myself. I'm sitting in a room and I'm laughing at myself, okay? If you can't laugh at yourself, I have allergies, man. I gotta stop sneezing. What the heck, okay? Anyways, a big, huge thank you to James Allen for coming in to record that episode. And of course, a big thank you to you guys at home for listening to it. I really, really hope that it is as valuable to you as it was to us. And I hope that you start, you think about some of the things that were mentioned in the episode. Don't let it go by without you taking action. So, think about your introduction. Think about, those 1% tweaks. And think about things like how you add and remove effects from your show. And maybe think about where you are on the building of your show journey that James was talking about. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you on episode 37.